There is a conversation that I've had many times over the years with artists, I have to say predominantly with contemporary classical composers and jazz musicians. And it goes something like this. Artist, the Arts Council doesn't fund music genre X. Me, have you ever made an application? Artist, no, but the Arts Council doesn't fund music genre X. There's a slightly more developed version of this that goes along very similar lines. Artist, Arts Council doesn't fund X. Me, haven't tried. Answer, yes, but I got rejected. Me, have you ever got feedback and resubmitted your application? Answer, no, but the Arts Council doesn't fund music genre X. Now, actually, the fact that we don't fund music genre X is quite frankly bollocks. We fund all genres of music. Yes, we fund symphony orchestras, yes, we fund orchestras, yes, they're expensive, but beyond that, there's a really good spread of genres and situations that we will fund. And that's everything all the way through to brass bands and jazz musicians. The problem that we want to talk to you about tonight is that we are seeing very, very few applications from individual composers. We're also seeing very few applications for commissioning composers. It does happen, but I have to say that over the 5 years that I've been at the Arts Council, the number of applications I've seen from individual composers is literally not much more than a handful. And actually, probably not much more than 2 handfuls, yeah, about that many, that are to do with commissioning. I have seen some very good ones, and I just kind of, I'm going to throw a couple of examples to you just to kind of indicate the kind of thing that we have seen. There's a composer in Brighton called Jessica Curry. She got 24,000 to realise this piece of music. She worked with a theatrical producer. She had a very strong artistic idea that paired her piece of music that she wanted to write with a commissioned piece of film, with some electronics and with a commissioned installation. She put it in the Old Vic tunnels under London Bridge Station. She had 3 performances there, got picked up by Time Out for being potentially a very interesting piece to go and see, and she sold it out. So that's one example. It does happen, it can happen, you can get audiences for it. Anyone come across the cellist, Matt Sharp? Matt Sharp commissioned a Scottish-based composer who I know well called Stephen Deasley to write a fantastic piece of music, especially for Matt, that really plays to his strengths, both a bass baritone, a cellist and a storyteller. Actually, PRS Foundation funded the commissioning part of that. What the Arts Council was able to do was to fund the touring of that piece of work. So actually, because of our money, that work, we enabled that work to basically tour England. So again, another example of the kind of thing that we will fund. So why are we not seeing more applications like this? Why have we got a sector that is happy to sit there and say, you don't fund us, but it's sitting on its hands when it comes to putting forward your creative ideas for us to help you realize them? Now, I thought about this for about 5 minutes and came up with 3 reasons. My first is, are you all sitting there waiting for the phone to ring for Symphony Orchestra X to say, we're going to commission you to write your next symphony? In which case, wake up and smell the coffee. It's not going to happen. The second reason is that perhaps you didn't know that we're here, that this funding is here, this funding is accessible. Perhaps you've had a road to Damascus evening moment tonight, a raised light has come down, and you realise it's now completely possible, and you're going to come and have a surgery afterwards, and brilliant, make an application. Exactly. Or is it a third reason, and I think this one is actually more interesting and goes beyond the scope of this grant here, and that is that there are barriers in the way to you helping you realise your creative ideas. That may be a lack of infrastructure, is there a lack of performance opportunities, is there a lack of venues wanting to take the work on, is there a lack of creative producers out there? And I think, personally, I think this is one of my bugbears, that there's a lack of creative producers that will help you realise the nuts and bolts of actually studying something like that. One of the barriers there should not be is actually in writing that application itself. It is a very dry process, it is a competitive process. About half of the applications across our desk are not successful, but we have deliberately designed it to not be particularly onerous. there are parameters. You do have to evidence quality, you do have to show how you're going to reach an audience, you do have to give concrete plans for how you're going to realise your ideas. But actually writing that application itself is not hard. I'm going to hand over to Rachel.
I would say the impetus for me behind this event started when I joined the Arts Council in 2010. So my previous experience of working for a funder was at the PRS Foundation, where we literally spent all day, every day, talking to composers and small ensembles. There was absolutely no issues with the lack of applications there, and we were really deluged. And I would echo what Ben said, that in my time in the London music team, I've seen a handful of applications from composers. So I was really surprised to find out how few were approaching us, and I wondered why that was. I don't know how many people here read my blog that I did recently for Sound of Music, which preceded this event. Essentially the point I was trying to make was that I believe this is a really good time to be a composer, and that there's a really great opportunity in terms of creative freedom, digital development, cultural globalization, the opportunity to promote your own work and profile it like never before. Being a working musician now does require skills related to all this opportunity, which I don't think were as essential 20 years ago. Things like an entrepreneurial flair, a good knowledge of the sector and the opportunities, the ability to make contacts, connections and links, and the talent for social media and self-promotion. The list goes on. In a conversation that we had a couple of months ago with our hosts here, with Peter and Andrew, they expressed concern that those abilities might be an even more of a route to success than genuine artistic talent and ability, and I mean that's a conversation in its own right. But I think we all recognise that when we see it, and I don't actually think that this is the case. I think that the real geniuses will still be found and nurtured whether they know how to tweet or not. And let's face it, most of us are not those geniuses. So it's likely that most artists' income streams will be supplemented by other types of work, or having to go and make your own opportunities. So making a positive effort to make these things happen for yourself has got to be the way forward. So a good example of people who've done that, something we saw at the PRS Foundation, the Camberwell Composers Collective. And that was a very entrepreneurial Anna Meredith, who's obviously gone on to great things since then. And she recognised that at that time there were very few opportunities for individual composers to apply to funders. So she got together with other composers. They constituted themselves, which is actually a really very simple process. They put on their own concerts, they engaged with their own ensembles, and they were able to make applications, and that's where it really started for her.
The Arts Council way that we invent phrases that kind of try to simplify very big issues. We talk about talent development. It's about artists kind of taking their own destiny into their own hands, and well, not even that. It's about having structures, about infrastructure that helps artists to develop their talent. So no, you don't have to be geniuses. You have to be trying to be geniuses. If that makes sense.
There's some very concrete things that we use to look at. So if you're able to show us press reviews, what other people have said about your work, so it doesn't necessarily have to be press, but other established composers. What audiences have said about your work? How many people come to your concerts? All of these things are ways of sort of proving your work in that respect.
How does that fit with being an emerging company or an emerging talent, where chances are you haven't yet had those things? How do you then demonstrate that?
There must be someone that you can call upon. Perhaps if you're a student composer, you've been working with someone more established who can speak up for you. Usually, you've got somebody who can make some kind of value statement about what you do.
I'm talking as a producer performer, so it's a different angle. I'm not talking as a composer.
I think there are times when we'll look at the quality of your idea, and if we can see that there's a real spark in that, I think that will be enough sometimes to carry an application through.
And sometimes it's about the quality of what you've got surrounding you. So it's about what venues you're using, who's working with you, who's supporting you to develop your idea. So sometimes it can be, as I say, it's about the quality of support that you've got as well.
Can I just go on one final point, which is can it also boil down to timing? Because actually I've had all of that kind of passed by you on an application in the past, and yet not actually made the cut eventually. And it seems to me that it's very much about different points in the year, coinciding with the festival season or the kind of dark season. There are certain times of year when things might have a better chance of getting through.
Well, it also might might have just been unlucky that you came in at a round
Surely,
where
of
there were
course.
lots of good applications.
Yeah, of course, I understand that too.
Did you get feedback at the time?
Yeah, that it's creatively excellent and that I just didn't make the cut out of sheer bad luck. That's all I got.
Did you try again?
Yeah.
Did you get it?
No.
No. I mean, I do have an example down in Brighton of a composer that did try 3 times to get his application through and got increasingly agitated because it wasn't going through. And the only feedback we could give him was there's nothing wrong, just try again.
Yeah.
And I completely appreciate how frustrating that can be. So.
Like a lot of funders, are you big on collaboration and partnerships and all that, or not necessarily?
No, I think those things, again, they're another example of quality to some extent, if people want to work with you, and it's a thing about added value as well, so yes.
Yes, but we could be a lonely composer entirely on their own. We can.
I think that's going to be tougher.
Or are you?
Yes, I think partnerships are important.
Yeah.
But they're not the be-all and end-all. They're not the only route. They certainly are a very good route. And again, it's about that kind of infrastructure you have around you, and the partnerships you're able to build will help you bring an audience to
The sensible work and the translation.
Absolutely. That doesn't mean that as an individual you still can't have access to it, but you're going to have to. If you want to put on public forums, you've got to have a venue. So you've got. There are some levels of interaction with a wider infrastructure you're going to have.
Mr. Bray.
Just a quick question. You were, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but you were saying that the feedback you got was your application is lovely, try again.
Yeah.
You know, if I was trying to chat to a girl who I got your application, it would be fuck off. Just working. So when you say your application is lovely, please try again, do you actually mean it?
I think if I was giving that feedback, then there's always, it's like an English essay. You can never write a perfect English essay. There's always things you could do better. You can never write a perfect piece of music. There's always things you could do better. And I think whenever I give feedback, I would always try and do some kind of developmental point to make it stronger. But it comes back to the point, you're still in a competitive field. You're still up against the fact that only half the applications are successful.
I think, well, Ben can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I think times have changed over the last few years, and actually we quite like to see things which are, fairly sustainable financially. So if it looks like it's going to be commercially viable, that's sometimes a positive.
Yeah, I think one generic piece of advice I tend to give is don't build a business model around funding. The fundraising specifically what I'm talking about, where it can be really helpful, particularly in a kind of commercial sense, is actually in helping you test out new ideas and helping you to take risks that you wouldn't commercially be able to take. Now, I think if you're able to put a case that if we are able to help you to kind of get a leg up to test something out, and then you go on to make that more commercially viable, that actually is fantastic.
Yeah.
So would you fund Andrew Lloyd Webber?
No, I think
It depends if he was doing something really artistically innovative.
That's what I'm hoping.
Never say never.
So that is a key thing. Innovation is a key thing. Not just track record or audience size, but innovation.
Innovation is part of it, but it's, it's as important as those other aspects.
I actually meant the converse as well, so if something clearly is not really making, or is unlikely to get anybody to come to listen to it or watch it or sell any records, are you thinking, well, it's great artistically, so we'll fund it anyway, or is that going to be an intrinsic application?
We don't get asked.
it's a balance, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing you have to remember is the money you're applying for is lottery money. So one of the kind of primary conditions of that money is that the benefit goes back to the public. So there is always going to be an application, an element of public benefit. That said, we do fund research and development. So we do fund things that or projects where the kind of the public benefit side of things perhaps isn't the primary outcome. It still needs to be in there somewhere, and you still need to demonstrate with that kind of application how in the long term you are able to, or you are trying to bring that product to market.
I mean, you may not be aware that we took over the funding for music education hubs in in the last year.
Yeah, well,
So they're absolutely a key part of our credibility.
I think that said, there is a myth that I've heard many times that all projects have to have an education element to them.
Yeah.
And that is a myth, that's a complete myth. And I think, just to add to what Rachel was saying about hubs, that the music education landscape, for us anyway, has become, I'm going to use another Arts Council word, more strategic. Where you are trying to do education work, we want to see that at least you have had conversations with the music education hubs where you're trying to deliver work, because they are bodies that are tasked with knowing where that activity is best targeted. Well, the second one, actually, I think you hit on one of those barriers I was talking about, and that is about an individual's ability to reach audiences. And I think that's where the kind of partnership thing that Pete was alluding to kind of comes into that. I mean, there are artists who are able to do all the nuts and bolts of organising a tour. It is possible, but I appreciate that there are a lot of different skills involved in doing that. And this is where this kind of thing about the need for producers, the need for people who are able to deal with that.
That's not the problem. Sorry to interrupt. The problem is to answer the questions as I saw them, which might be different now, about audience. How does it reach the audience? What is it? You know, that is the issue, not the nuts and bolts of booking of hotels.
I think we're back to the same answers I gave Claire earlier about finding someone who can work with you at the Arts Council who can help you with those questions that are more difficult to answer.
there are professional grant writers around these days.
They're expensive.
They're expensive. Do you recommend using them?
I've never written a bid for London.
You could be.
Yeah, not the Arts Council.
So there is a kind of professional.
You don't need to. For the lower level grants for the arts forum, you really do not need to use the services of a professional fundraiser. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's in plain English. You know, we're not quite at that stage, but it's pretty darn straightforward, and it won't take you long to decipher it.
And actually, I mean, in my time of looking over applications, you can spot a professional bid writer's application, and you can spot when somebody actually isn't creatively involved in the thing they're applying for. And actually, they don't make the best applications. The best applications come from artists, or when artists are involved in putting together the application, because it's their voice that you hear.
It's their passion that comes across.
Quite, and do believe that the people reading those applications can actually spot that. So professional bid writers, yes, they can be very helpful, but they aren't the be-all and end-all by any means.
So you're going by, you're not number crunching, you're going by field as well as by analysis.
Evidence! Well, I was going to use the E word. You know, it is about evidence. It is about evidence. I mean, I think the way that the application process has changed recently, actually there's a lot less emphasis on the quality of the written information. It's about the content of the written information. So it is, as Adam has just pointed out, it is about evidence rather than how well constructed that application is.
Just make it possible for us to fund you. That's what I want you to do. Okay?
Christian wanted to try to get in.
Hi, yeah. The two examples you gave of successful applications were Matt Sharp, the cellist who sings and tells stories, and also the composer who did the thing under the arc. And she incorporated lots of multimedia and that kind of thing. Is there an implication from that the more kind of facets you include in your application, the more successful it's likely to be? So,
I would say you can absolutely do what you do, but I think, I mean, Jessica's creative idea demanded the response that she gave it. There is something there about presentation. Yes, there is something there about presentation. That is something to consider, but that doesn't mean by any means that I'm saying we will only fund stuff that's full of gimmicks, if that makes sense.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with people dressed in black sat on a stage playing their instruments.